Hello and welcome to another Truesight Tuesday. This one happens to be on Valentine's Day, and you're so lucky because I'm here not to help out your D&D game, but to help out with some relationship counseling for Warlocks and patrons, so it's still about D&D. Specifically, Nova Static says, "Love the videos, thanks. I know you said you'd like to step out of D&D a bit, but I'd love to hear your opinions on Warlock patrons. Basically, the interactions or relationship the PC can have with the patron, from great old ones to fiends to genie or undead or even dragons. I think the classic thing a patron would ask a warlock for is killing or taking souls. That seems kind of cliche, which isn't necessarily a bad thing though, but doesn't really fit into a lot of themes DMs may want running in their games. What are some things you've seen or would suggest to have a patron ask of a PC? What are the costs of a PC not doing something a patron asks of them without making the game unfun? What does that balance look like? Without saying talk to the player, because I feel like that's an obvious first step. Just, don't take it for granted that somebody wants this to be a big part of their game, to be a big part of the campaign, or to be a big part of their personal quest. It might just be that you made a deal with a warlock long ago and you continue to reap the benefits, and that's all there is to it. But most people will want this. So as far as what that looks like, I think you need to define the relationship, as odd as that sounds. And I do want to start with some of the official book material, something that might have been glossed over in Xanathar's guide before you get the juicy new subclass rules, is some of the extra flavor to add on to each class. So I'm going to read off some of the patron attitudes. 1. Your patron has guided and helped your family for generations and is kindly towards you. 2. Each interaction with your capricious patron is a surprise, whether pleasant or painful. 3. Your patron is the spirit of a long-dead hero who sees your pact as a way for it to continue to influence the world. 4. Your patron is a strict disciplinarian but treats you with a measure of respect. 5. Your patron tricked you into a pact and treats you as a slave. 6. You are mostly left to your own devices with no interference from your patron. Sometimes you dread the demands it will make when it does appear. So we can already just see from this G6 list that there's a lot of different dynamics you can have. One that I've used before with people who pick fiendish warlocks is sometimes I don't go straight for one of the archdukes of hell. Although Glazia is a favorite for me, you might not be a warlock that serves Glazia at first. You will be ran by some middle manager in hell. And once you complete your report card and you do enough for the company, now you'll get to talk to Glazia, the private client advisor of warlocks. Now you'll get to take on more deals as you start getting more of those powers. I have had actually a player approach me and be like, hey, I want to follow kind of an unseelie fae entity, but I want them to be really out there. I don't want them to be from Alice in Wonderland, I want the great old one. And I think that's perfectly fine. Remember, we're separating the flavor text from the rules text. And I think when you do that, you might have a player who says, okay, I really like the powers that the Fathomless gives me, but I don't want to follow some kind of Ocean Cthulhu monster. I still want to do a fairy. And that's fine. Go for it. Let them pick their favorite monster out of the monster manual, or whatever homebrew material, or whatever their favorite fantasy book is, and say, I would like to follow an entity like this, please. And then pick the stats, the mechanics, they're more or less balanced, that match up to that idea, even if they don't match each other rules to flavor, as the WotC books say. Try to find those quandaries between what your patron wants and what your party wants, or between what your patron wants and what you said your ideal as a mortal is. That can be very cool. To that end, you might find some good opportunities in-game. I have had multiple Warlock players, both in professional and home settings, run through, have to do something for their patron, or get kind of bored with their deal from their patron, and then say, I would like to see myself as a free agent. I would like to seek out another entity that I found on the quest that I think is really cool, and I would like to work for them, please. And I think that is something that you can kind of renegotiate their contract on. So in general, when you are talking about what a patron is asking from their warlock to go do for them and what kind of reward that will give, I have held level ups behind kind of that paywall of you got to go do something for your patron. Okay, did you do it? You're going to get the level up. Or, oh, you didn't? You're still going to get the level up because I'm not going to have everyone else at the table be level 5 while you're level 4, but it's going to cost you some interest. But levels XP are not the only kind of reward in D&D, right? There can be loot, there can be extra feats, extra training, there can be positions of power and privilege, contact with, some other fae or some other devil that the party needs for their quest. So let's just go bit by bit to wrap up here. ARCHFEY, I could talk about all day. If they're very, very whimsical, you can have more silly stuff to do. Like, I need my pot of gold filled with more gold coins. Please collect 2,000 and put it in my pot of gold. Or if you want that more classical, haughty, like, I am an ancient spirit of nature, and I require that you fill my pot of gold with 2,000 gold pieces, please. You can get into all kinds of politics with the Feywild that's going on there. And the thing I like about Feywild politics is it can be lawful and chaotic at the same time. Like, they're making deals, but there's still a lot of fickleness and silliness to it. ARCHFEY is not only one of my favorites, but probably one of the most popular choices from players, especially in our kids' games for summer camps, which actually warlocks were some huge portion of players. I've lost the stats by now, but keeping track of what kids pick what classes, warlocks was something like 20%. So basically every table we had, someone at that table is playing a warlock. And a lot of them would pick ARCHFEY. When we get to the Fiend, so this is clearly in our lawful evil. There's a ton of hell politics you can get into, little power plays going on there. This one, it's a little difficult to avoid the whole, souls thing, because I need you to corrupt this noble warrior's soul to make sure that they land on my layer of hell when they are a devil. That's a very strong and a very easy pull for devils. But there's other things you can do with corruption in general as a theme. You can, go down the 7 deadly sins and assign your warlock or your patron to one of those. Is that also a little bit cliche? Yes, but I think it is one where narrative and character can shine, and it can also kind of shine a spotlight on how we as mortals, we are never going to be full wrath, but a devil that is only about wrath would be purely that. How does this mortal coincide with that, and how do they differ from that? I think that's an interesting storyline. The Great Old One. Again, Great Old One can be anything. It doesn't have to just be a Lovecraftian Cthulhu monster. So on this one, I'll say seek out your horror movies, especially your psychological horror movies. Your Hellraiser kind of stuff. Although that works for Fiend too, to see what kind of just out there, mind-boggling stuff does this entity with a completely different grasp on reality want? I'm afraid I don't have specifics there, because a lot of the Great Old Ones that I've had have been somebody who liked the mechanics but didn't really want a weird alien Cthulhu. Actually, alien stuff, that's where you can get, I need you to abduct somebody, I need you to establish my path of planar travel by placing a piece of my starstone in X particular place. That's something you can do. The celestial, lame. No, you can have fun with goody two shoes angels. I think the difficulty with the celestial warlock is kind of like the difficulty with the nature cleric. If you have somebody who's really drawn to that kind of archetype, they're much more likely to play a druid, right? If you have somebody who's more drawn to a celestial warlock, they are probably just going to play a cleric. But let's say they want to play the celestial warlock because they still want to shoot eldritch blasts. Just like we were talking about corruption with the fiend, you can have redemption for an angel. I like redemption a bit better than like purity and purifying, because once you start going in that direction, I think you can get angels and celestials that, while not evil in the sense, are just as harmful to mortal spirit and mortal freedoms as a devil can be. The Hexblade, this is a tough one for me. I had one time where a character actually did want an intelligent weapon. And the thing about the intelligent weapon was that it was an entity from the Shadowfell that wanted to be free. And it wasn't necessarily that the more this person killed, the stronger it got, Soul Calibur kind of bullshit, but it mattered where they had their fights, how they had their fights, and how they communicated and talked to the sword. You can actually, I know I just referenced this series, but I love it so much. You can actually do a lot with Hexblade by referencing the Stormlight Archive. The Undying. There's a lot that you can do about undead. What I said about the fiend and how they can really magnify a particular sin, an undead can be very easily a manifestation of still sins or a strong mortal desire that has become immortal, right? I already gave an example with the warlock who became a lich's phylactery. Basically, look in the monster manual, see what is cool about this undead. What do I like about it? Now, how does this undead thing need a mortal to help them continue on their path of immortality? That's useful. The Fathomless, probably the coolest warlock story I had. We actually had somebody who was playing, I think they were like a draconic sorcerer, and they died. And then the necromancer, wizard, and the cleric were able to work together on the revivify spell to bring them back. And this player decided, well, now that I'm back and I was gotten back from the necromancer's magic, I would actually like to become an Undying warlock for her aunt, who happens to be a lich. And I said, oh, interesting. And they're like, yeah, so I want to do that. That's a cool narrative pull, but what do I have to give to her, the lich? And I said, nothing at all. So we found out later, a few sessions from now, that this sorcerer warlock has become the living phylactery of this lich. So once the party finds this out, I've now not only put the warlock in the position where they're like, oh, I need to protect myself. I need to be careful, otherwise my patron will die. I have a very important purpose to them. And naturally, the patron said, you're very important to me. Let me give you whatever you need to stay alive and do your quests and flourish as a mortal, because I'm proud of you. This happened to be a very nice lich. It was a cute character that came up with from the wizard character, who now that wizard player has been bound in part of this pact. They don't want the warlock to die, because then something terrible will happen to their auntie, the nicest lich that ever lived. Now, what I described there can't happen in every game, because of course that was somebody becoming a warlock halfway through your game. Although I do think that Fathomless is different. Fathomless is probably the one I've had the least amount of experience with. Again, this can be a Cthulhu monster. This can just be the drowned god from Game of Thrones, Song of Ice and Fire lore. You can have a Fathomless warlock that is all drawn to a fantastic voyage. I need you to build a ship. Oh, that's Noah's Ark. I need you to cross over this ocean. That could actually be an adventure starter right there, where everyone thinks that they have been hired to go on this long journey when actually the person that arranged the trip is somebody in the party. That's some very cool table politics you can have with that player to try to see how long they can keep the secret. And by the time it gets out that, guys, you're actually okay, you're doing this for me. We're going to this Bermuda Triangle place to recover my patron. By the time that's already out, you're already halfway to the Bermuda Triangle and you can't get out. Yeah, there's some very cool stuff you can do with the Fathomless if you relate it to travel. And doesn't that really get back to the sense of adventure that you want in your D&D game anyway? The Genie. So there's a big divide on genies between people who hear genie and they think, oh, 3 wishes. And I did have a kid at a summer camp who said, I picked genie. And I'm like, do you want me to do the Robin Williams voice? And he was like, yeah, that's who I want to be my patron. I'm like, all right, I'll do my best. That was a terrible off the cuff Robin Williams, and mine at the time that I practiced wasn't much better. There's a divide between like, I want you to do wishes, I want you to free me from the lamp, that kind of stuff, and seeing genies in D&D lore where they are more elementals. I want you to start the biggest fire. Dang it, we're killing people again. I want you to travel to the ice caps, and I want you to release some of my minions there. I want you to imbue some of my air spirits, my lightning spirits in my domain into weapons on your realm. I want you to carry my fire to the tallest mountain and light a light there so that the god that used to be my best friend eons ago before the planar wars tore us asunder, I want them to know that I see them and I want to be their friend again. But only a mortal can do this. Only on the material is this possible. Just riffing. I hope this was helpful. I'm still playing around with Truesight Tuesday. I don't know what every topic is going to be. Last time it was, 5 comments. Today it's one big one. So big shout out to Nova Static. Thank you for posing this really nice question. I hope to see some more comments in the thread that can be related to Warlocks, or it can just be stuff we need to talk about, stuff going on in your own game that you need a little bit of help with. Until then, have a nat 20 day. Bye-bye.